Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Vegan Women Leaders. I'm your host, Katrina Fox, and my guest today is the one and only Jane Velez-Mitchell. Jane is the founder and content editor of JaneUnChained, which is a multi-platform animal rights and vegan lifestyle media outlet. Now, Jane's been a TV journalist, a mainstream TV journalist for decades. Her experience includes reporting for the nationally syndicated show Celebrity Justice, and she had a 6-year stint with her own show on CNN Headline News, where she ran a weekly segment on animal issues. If that's not enough, Jane is also the author of 4 books, including her memoir, iWant, My Journey from Addiction and Overconsumption to a Simpler, Honest Life, and Addict Nation, an intervention for America. Based in Los Angeles, Jane is also the producer and host of the award-winning vegan TV show, cooking show, New Day, New Chef on Amazon Prime. Jane, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here, Katrina. I love you. You do so much for vegan women, for vegan businesses. You've sent me so many story ideas that we've used. So thank you for all you do. You're a powerhouse.
Well, I'm really happy to have this conversation because I know I've interviewed you before around, PR tactics, media tactics, business stuff, but this is all about you. And I'm actually going to kick off with a little story, and you might not remember this. I'll just give a bit of context. So many years ago, I think around 2007, I did an interview for a mainstream women's magazine here on a vegan animal rights activist, women animal rights activists. And I interviewed your then partner, Sandra. And she said, oh, you should meet my girlfriend, Jane Velez-Mitchell. She's like a mainstream TV journalist. And I think I got a quote from you. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really cool. She works in mainstream media and she's a vegan. Anyway, that was all good. 2 years later, 2009, I was freelancing for the LGBTIQ media. And one of the outlets I was writing for was Curve, which is the US's national lesbian magazine. And the then editor sent me an email saying, hey, would you interview this journalist? She's a mainstream TV journalist here in the US, and she just come out as a lesbian. Her name's Jane Velez-Mitchell. And I thought, I recognize that name. And then I'm like, oh my God, she's vegan and a lesbian. How wonderful. But here's the thing. I wrote my article for Curve. Did a really nice piece. You and I did a phone interview. I wrote a really nice article, and I had a working headline of She's Got Issues, because your show at the time, you just landed your show, was Issues with Jane Velez-Mitchell. So I filed the article, really happy. Now, remember, this is print, so it took a couple of months later. The magazine comes out. I wake up to an email from Curve saying, here's your tear sheet, showing the article in the magazine in PDF format. I was just about to open it, and I saw an email from your publicist at the time, at Time Warner, saying, the headline is an absolute nightmare. I can't believe this. It's outrageous. And I thought, what's wrong with my headline? She's got issues. Then I opened the tear sheet, and the editor at Curve had changed my headline from She's Got Issues to Step Aside Nancy Grace.
Oh, no.
And
no
like,
wonder,
I know, and I was like, what happened? I said, look, I don't know what happened. Anyway, the editor
didn't like that. That would not be good, because I was like Nancy's little sidekick.
I know.
Step Aside Nancy Grace.
I know, but
I would have got the job if it wasn't for Nancy Grace. I
know.
reporting on the Michael Jackson trial and being Nancy's reporter every night. And that's sort of how I got the job eventually. So that would be like somebody saying, step aside Ingrid Newkirk, Katrina Fox is here. I know. Oh, I worship Ingrid Newkirk.
Exactly. So I was mortified. The editor, like, they didn't mean it in any negative way. They were more kind of like, oh, there's a new kid in town. They said, we love Nancy. We're so apologetic. But I remember thinking, even though I've done nothing wrong, Jane's going to hate me.
Nancy is not a vegan or a lesbian, by the way.
I know. And I remember thinking, look, thankfully, it wasn't like it was the New York Times or, the National Enquirer. It was a lesbian magazine. So hopefully Nancy won't be too annoyed. But it was just quite funny. I looked at that email. Just
reads those lesbian magazines.
Exactly. I can imagine her being furious. But anyway, so that's my little funny story too, which you've probably forgotten all about. But it just made me chuckle I was looking last night. I was thinking I'll dig it out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I still got that email from the publicist. But look, let's take
100 years ago. I've forgotten all about that.
But look, let's take us. Let's take us back to your mainstream journalism days, Jane, because you've had such a big career, you know, as a TV reporter. And when I was doing research for this interview, I saw it was a guy, I think he was a legal counsel, and he was saying that you were always there, like working the crowd, getting right in there, asking those questions, being really persistent. So take us back to those days. What did you love about it, and any kind of memorable anecdotes that you can share?
Well, I was always that activist. Even in my high school yearbook picture, I was talking about animal rights, and I had done some protests, not animal rights protests, but just protests, like teenager protests. And I remember there was a news crew that reported on a protest we had. We had a faux funeral. My mother used to help me all the time with, she had a friend of hers dressed like a priest, and we made a fake casket, and we were doing some crazy street theater. And we got covered by the news media, the local news media in New York, where I grew up. And so I was kind of intrigued by the idea of reporting. Prior to that, I was a big reader growing up. I was an only child. My parents really didn't let me watch TV, so I read a lot of books, a lot of novels, and I wanted to be a syndicated columnist and just give my opinions, because I was extremely opinionated young person. And so after being interviewed a couple of times, when it came time to apply, I just applied. I just checked off broadcast journalism. I really didn't think that much about it. I really didn't. I see these people who, visit all these colleges, and they go through all sorts of. I just applied to NYU and I got accepted, and I checked off broadcast journalism. 4 years later, I graduated, and within 2 months, I had a job in Fort Myers, Florida. I was a reporter. That was 1977, and they didn't even have live broadcasts. I did the first live broadcast in terms of being a live remote from outside the studio. And they said, I'll never forget, the news director said, now you're going to go down to the courthouse and you're going to talk at the same time as the anchor's talking. And I was like, what? And so that was a long time ago. And we actually did like film. We shot with film. This was a long time ago. So I worked in Fort Myers, Florida, which I loved. I actually love Florida. I love the climate. I love the warmth. And I said, I got to get out of here because I'll never leave. Fort Myers Beach was just a fun town to live in. And so then I ended up in Minneapolis, which is the worst culture shock I've ever experienced. I took my junior year at Universidad de las Americas in Mexico. And I had a great time. I was in Puebla, Cholula area. I didn't experience culture shock there. I had a great time. But when I moved to Minneapolis, oh my God, I arrived in the middle of winter. It was I didn't even have closed-toe shoes. I owned no coat. I didn't know how to drive. I'm a city girl. I grew up in Manhattan. I had an MG Midget when I was in Florida, which was always broken. I hitchhiked. I was a glorified teenager, my first job, which was a news anchor and reporter. And I had such a culture shock in Minneapolis. I couldn't start my car in the morning. It was like 45 degrees below zero. It was insane. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a defroster. I almost killed people because finally I was giving my boss a lift, and he said, "What are you doing? Are you trying to kill us?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Turn on the defroster." And I was like, what's that? And that's the world I was in. How I survived. I actually survived because of a very nice guy who I went on one date with him. Then I called him panicked. I was panicked. I had moved into a part of town that was just completely remote. I was like, I can't function. And he said, I'll be there in a little bit. And he picked me up, and I lived with him for 2 years. So I'm not a gold star lesbian, okay?
We'll get into that.
And he was still a friend. I saw him when my movie, the documentary Countdown to Year Zero, came out. He came into the premiere in New York City and attended the premiere. So we're still friends. But in any case, then I worked in Minneapolis for 2 years. Then I worked in Philadelphia. And then I'm from Manhattan. I grew up across the street, literally, from Carnegie Hall. So our news director got promoted to the New York City station. This was a CBS affiliates or owned and operated stations. And I just begged him. I said, please take me with you. Get me out of Philadelphia. Philadelphia's a lovely place, but I wanted to go home. And so I finally got home, and I worked at WCBS for 8 years as a reporter and then weekend anchor. then a good friend of mine, who was also a reporter there, got a job in LA at KCAL, which was just bought by Disney. And they wanted an anchor. He recommended me. I got hired. And it was the most fun I've ever had, because New York is a tough town. It is a tough, competitive town. And when I got the job in LA, it was like winning the lottery, because it was on the Paramount lot. I had a nice parking spot on the Paramount lot, very glamorous for me. It was Hollywood, and everybody had been hired at the same time. So we had this camaraderie, almost like an acting troupe, all hired at the same time. We went out and partied. And it was around that time that, 26 years ago, I got sober. So I'm a recovering alcoholic, one day at a time, 26 years sober. That job was a great job. And I was an anchor, evening anchor, for 12 years. And then the management came in, it was sold, Disney sold it. There was a new management came in, and finally it ended, that you don't, there are some people who work forever at one station, but I had a good run, 12 years. So I jumped over to Celebrity Justice, which was a tabloid show, very tabloid. And that's where I started doing animal activism. Actually, in the interim, I had gone vegan. I had interviewed Howard Lyman, who was the fourth generation cattle rancher turned vegan activist who had gone on Oprah. And he revealed the horrors of the cattle industry, and Oprah was sued, and there was this big drama, and he wrote a book, Mad Cowboy, and he came to the studio, and I did an interview with him, and afterwards he and his publicist walked up to my cubicle, and they said, "We hear you're a vegetarian." By that time I was a vegetarian. I said, "Yes." And they said, "Do you consume dairy?" And I kind of hung my head. He had talked about all the horrors, the babies being ripped from their mothers, the mothers forcibly impregnated, the veal calves, the boys put into veal. Yeah. And so I hung my head and I said, "Yeah, I do eat dairy." And he and his publicist went like this, right at my nose. "Liquid meat." That's the moment I went vegan.
You went vegan.
Okay. Awesome. I was sober. So I had clarity, because when you get sober, you get clearer. And then I went vegan. And then when I went to Celebrity Justice, which was this tabloid syndicated show, we would have a meeting every morning. It was the precursor to TMZ. And it would be, where's the celebrity? Where's the justice? And at that moment, I started to realize, well, celebrities hate us. They hang up the phone. They literally run away from us. How can I get celebrities? And I thought, PETA. I'm going to work with PETA and see if they can get me celebrities. And sure enough, these celebrities would push their publicists aside and talk to me because they were so passionate. I even interviewed Robert Redford, who was concerned about the military sonar crippling the whales. And so I was getting these celebrities because they cared about animal causes. So that's how I started doing animal rights.
I love that. And then you got your own show on HLN. And I remember when I interviewed you, this was back in 2009, I think you just got your show and you said, "Oh, this is my dream job." But it was obviously quite a stressful job. I think I remember actually I came to visit you in 2012 when you were really in full on TV journalism mode. I was like, it was quite fascinating. It's so interesting seeing you now because you're so much more relaxed. But look, you did an amazing job, obviously, on HLN. But then it came to an end. And I don't know how much you can kind of say about that, but was it how did you feel at the end of that? Because you'd had your own show. It was your dream job, even though it was, kind of high flying, full on high pressure. Was it a case they just said, "Okay, Jane, we need someone else new on the show. You've had a good run." How did that kind of end?
Get into that too much, but I left on very good terms. The show came to its end.
Right.
Shows often, usually, almost invariably don't run forever. The great thing about local news, until there are no TV sets, there will be local news. You can get that if you want. It might be a local news station wanting a comment. But the point is that these shows don't last forever. 6 years, I thought was a pretty good run. I expected the apartment I'm sitting in LA. I was sitting in this apartment when I got the call, "Do you want the job?" I thought I was going to be there for 2 months because I got the job because Glenn Beck, who had the show prior to me, reportedly had a hissy fit and stormed off the set, and they wanted to replace him quickly. And so they called me. So I thought I'd have the job for 2 months or maybe 6 months max. So I never left my apartment. I kept my apartment here. And I just moved in with my mother, who still lived across from Carnegie Hall. So right near where I worked. So I was pleased with the 6-year run. Of course, nobody wants their show to end. People say who say they're leaving television. BS. People will stay on TV until they're forced out. And I felt like, well, okay, 38 years from 1977 to late 2014, 38 years, pretty much continuously employed. It's a good run. So while I wasn't celebrating the end of my show, I was exactly 59 and a half, and it was a good run. And so what I did was, because I left on good terms, I asked them, can I have all my social media? And they said, sure. Now, I had never tweeted. I didn't have the passwords to any of it. And thank God, because I probably would have been fired immediately if I had the passwords to my own Twitter account. So people did that. So I took that because they had built up quite a little audience for me. And what I had been able to do when I got the job, I said, would you mind if I did a little animal segment once a week? And they thought about it for a second. And they said, no, okay, you could do an animal segment because it's a crime show. So we did crime, murders mostly. And it's something I'm not actually particularly interested in. I'm not a crime buff. But that's the show. And that's what I had sort of morphed into, because from being on Celebrity Justice, where we covered celebrity scandal, then I ended up covering the Michael Jackson trial. I was a reporter assigned to that. And that's how I ended up kind of in the crime genre, because I was reporting for Nancy Grace, who is a crime journalist and former prosecutor. So in any case, they said, no, we think you could do a little animal segment once a week. Maybe they thought I was going to do pet adoption, but I started to do all sorts of animal rights stuff: pig gestation crates, tail docking, fur. We had all the leaders of the animal rights groups on. And I felt so fat. That was my best part of the job. The best part of the job was that I had this redeeming event once a week on Friday, 4 minutes, which, it's seen in 39 countries. It is a global network. So I felt like I was getting this animal rights stuff out that had never gotten out on a weekly basis before.
Yeah,
sure,
awesome.
there have been reports on undercover investigations. So I was very happy about that. And sure, were there push and pull? Yes. I mean, I had some writers say to me, I can't do another one of these stories. I'm having nightmares, because they were looking at the raw footage of factory farming, which is also good. Let them know. And this was way before the show ended in late 2014. So this was before the Beyond Meat IPO. And one of the executive producer texted me after the Beyond Meat IPO and said, you were very prescient with your advocacy of veganism. And I was like,
absolutely.
Yeah,
hell yeah.
It's not so much fun being prescient, I'll tell you that much, because there's push and pull. Like, the show had my name on it. I did not want to have events where there was dead animals served and things like that, which so many vegans run up in the corporate world. But now things are changing. People are more respectful of the choice, and more people are into it. In fact, one of the executives there went vegan, and there was, after me pleading for a few years, all of a sudden I walked into the cafeteria and there were vegan options everywhere. And I went, what happened?
Nice. I love that.
Yeah. So
I can relate to that, actually, because when I used to edit a lesbian magazine here in Australia, they gave it to me to edit. And I would always try, because it had, like, when it's got your name on it as editor, like when we had to do something, it was like a leather pride thing, because it was a queer mag. And when I hired the photographer, I said, don't shoot any leather. And then the publisher came and said, look, we've got advertisers, we've got to have at least one item. So I put a tiny little item in this whole thing, and I didn't like it. So I totally relate to that, but I love that. Now I want to get to, just conscious of time. So in terms of, you mentioned you're a recovering alcoholic, 26 years sober. Awesome. So when you were, I think you said you were drinking from quite a young age to be social, but how much of being an alcoholic, do you think, or the alcohol, how much of a role did that play in you having to kind of feeling like you had to keep your sexuality hidden?
Okay, but I also want to get to JaneUnChained.com.
We will.
Yes, thank you. So Yes, I was definitely. I think that addiction is multi-determined. It was environmental. My dad was a high-functioning alcoholic advertising executive in New York, straight out of Mad Men with the martinis. So I grew up around all these cocktail parties where people were drinking excessively. I thought it was normal. Also, on that side of the family, there is alcoholism, so genetic probably predisposition. And also, yes, I'm gay, and it didn't seem like an option when I was growing up. And so I think there were feelings of discomfort that I was pushing down. So yeah, multi-determined. Definitely, I think that's the combo platter that led to excessive drinking.
Got it. So you came out on the radio, which was a cool story. So how did you feel afterwards? Because like you said, you were having this mainstream career, and you just kind of decided, I think, in the break of the commercial break of this radio show. How did you feel? Like what kind of happened afterwards? Was there any fear that, oh my God, this could wreck my career?
Well, no. I mean, I was between jobs at that point, and I was filling in at KBC Radio for literally like 2 days, and it didn't work out. I've had jobs that have worked out for years, but this one definitely didn't work out. It's a very radio is very conservative generally, unless it's a liberal station, and so I was supposed to be doing news segments, and I was listening to all this conservative, ultra conservative lingo, and they started attacking Priuses. Now, I'm on my third Prius. I love Priuses. So instead of reading my news, I argued with the host and said, what you're saying about Priuses is just plain old wrong. And they're not just for elites now. It's like everybody drives a Prius. But at the time, it was like this new car. It had been featured on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and it was kind of like your stereotypical liberal person's car. And I said, it's a hybrid. I can go from here to Santa Maria and back twice on one tank. And anyway, then I ended up, so that didn't go over well. And then the next segment that I was doing was with this log cabin Republican, which is a gay Republican, talking about Senator Larry Craig, who was the toe-tapping senator who was caught at the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport and accused of sort of soliciting guys. And he was a very conservative politician who was perceived of as very anti-gay. So the hypocrisy, and we were just going on and on and on. And then I said, during the break, I said, I feel very hypocritical. We're attacking this person, but I haven't shared that I live with a woman. And I just thought, I said, I feel like I need to share that because I was starting to feel very icky. And so after the commercial ended, I just came out and said it. And it was devastating. Nobody cared.
Except the lesbians. Curve magazine cared. Lesbians everywhere were like,
my ex-boyfriend said to me, it's worse than that, Jane. Nobody's thinking about you at all. Devastating.
Too funny. Now, you've mentioned that you were not a card-carrying lesbian. So you were married for a while. You were married to a guy and you dated guys. So when you kind of came out and you said, you're gay, and there's a lot of labels now, there's gay, there's lesbian, there's bi, there's queer. What do you think about kind of all that, but like, was it that you were always a lesbian and you were just trying to be heterosexual, or you were, genuinely attracted to men?
Yes, I was always a lesbian trying to be heterosexual, but I think that the Kinsey scale, as I joked in the beginning, there are some gold star lesbians who've never had any interactions with guys. I liked guys and I got along with them well, and I didn't have any trouble meeting them, probably because I didn't care that much. It's always the irony, right? When you're really hungry for something, it's not as successful as when you're like, I could care less.
Yeah.
So I think it's a complicated issue. As somebody said to me, sexuality, wow, right? I would say that I did care and love some of my boyfriends, but it's a little different. There's something there that's different than when you're a lesbian, the depth of feeling or what you're really meant to be. And it's not about sex. It's about identity. It's about who you are, feeling comfortable in your skin. And after I came out, I was finally like, oh, okay, I can breathe. It's not just about who you're dating. It's about who you are. That's the key. And, it's so wonderful now today that you can just be who you are. at least when it comes to your sexual orientation. And as far as I can see, where I live, and admittedly, I'm in the Venice, California area, but it's not an issue. And so it's great to be able to have that freedom, because somebody said it's like being in a vertical casket when you have to pretend, or you feel you can't be who you really are. So
that's a really good analogy. Yeah.
I don't ever want to put down men I've dated. I mean, Jim saved me for 2 years in Minneapolis. I probably would have frozen to death if it weren't for him. And, I've had, great boyfriends, and, I'm still friends with my ex-husband. I talk to him every so often. So it's not about that. It's about just being comfortable in one's own skin and being true to oneself, I think, more than anything.
Did you watch The L Word?
I did. The original. I loved it. In fact, at the time when it first came out, I was still like, and he's like, that's not a documentary. He had a great humor. The real life L Word, I'm not as, I don't know. The first original series was so incredible, so amazing. We used to have parties where we'd all watch. All the lesbians would watch this, and
nice
house. But I don't know. I wish it the best. The original series was brilliant.
So you've only watched one series. I don't know. You might be in danger of losing your lesbian card there.
I watched the others. I'm just not as enamored of them. The real life one was not. I think it was called. I don't know. I don't know.
Now I know you. Just going back briefly. I know you got to watch all of them. There's a new series now, L Word Generation Q, and Jennifer Beals is in it. She's my favorite.
I love her. Yeah,
she's awesome.
Not a lesbian, by the way. I
know, but she plays it so well. I wish she was. Anyway, now I just want to go briefly back to when you had your show. I remember, I think I'd met up with you in New York and with some friends. We were having dinner, and you said at the time you were given a lot of grief, like as often happens with a lot of women now, particularly women, whether it's on TV and now, of course, online, like insulting you, like calling you names, telling you you're ugly. I think you said someone said,
nobody ever called me ugly.
Did they not? I thought they said, you said something, they were attacking your appearance or something. You
must have me confused with another lesbian who had a TV show.
Maybe, but
I was never sexually abused, and nobody ever called me ugly to my face, maybe behind my back. I have 99 problems, but that wasn't one of them.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. I thought I heard that you had some, people, when women are fronting something, you get a lot of criticism, and often sometimes it's around.
I mean, look, I look back on some of my shows during the 80s. I had hair that's the size of a spaceship, and pads on my shoulder, my jackets that look like something out of Darth Vader. I mean, I look back and I go, what was I thinking? Yeah, I'm my own critic. Yes.
No, I thought that was a pretty cool look. I used to love Dallas and Dynasty, so I thought that was a pretty cool look. In terms of when I look back on the interview I did with you, I thought it was quite interesting. You said that you don't like to be thought of as a role model or a trailblazer, as that can set you up for failure. And you said, the most important part of my sobriety is humility. And anytime I start veering away from that, there are always problems. When I'm self-obsessed, things don't go my way. But when I'm just trying to be of service, good things happen. That really resonated. Can you expand a bit on that? I think that's really pretty cool.
Well, I mean, it's true. I think most of my problems will stem from if I become it's about me, take things personally, or in some way think that I'm a role model. Look, we're all flawed. We all have character defects. I'm a hothead. I lose my temper regularly, and then I got to apologize. So we none of us is perfect. And when we start believing our own public relations, we usually get into trouble. And so it's just, I've forgotten that at times. It's very easy to forget those things. And then you have an experience. You know what they say, either be humble or get humiliated. So, yeah, I think it's a good rule of thumb, and it's good to remember. Maybe I should paste that to my mirror in the morning so I can remember all those things I said. Okay.
I think that's a good one. How do you handle at the moment, like you're 26 years sober, is it kind of, quote, easy for you, like, because obviously you're in LA, you go to events, animal rights galas, events, dinner, like if
not
someone's
lately.
having we're not lately, true. But if if someone's there or if there's drinks around, like, is that kind of hard for you now, or is it kind of
No, I mean, I don't, I don't like to talk too much about it because it's really a personal thing. But all we have is today as sober people. We can't start bragging about our sobriety or anything like that because it can get lost. And so that's the most humbling thing, is that when it comes to alcohol, we have one power and one power alone, and that is to stay away from it entirely. And so, no, I don't think about it. But the point is that it's not something to brag about. You don't run around going, oh yes, the obsession is lifted, because so many people have said that, and then something happens or nothing happens and they slip. So I don't want to be that person, and it's one day at a time. That's what it is.
I love that. We're going to end up with a rapid fire section of questions, but before we do that, talk about Jane Unchained. So you had your own show, you left, and then you started Jane Unchained fairly soon. How has that been different and just, how it's impacted you and just yourself? Like I said, I can just see that and I know it was obviously great being on the national, TV channels because you're getting it out there, but you seem like really happy and relaxed doing Jane Unchained.
Oh, we're getting things done. It's not like I'm talking to myself. It's successful. We've had 17 million views one year, 60 million views. That's just on Facebook. We also have JaneUnChained.com. We put out stories all the time. My gosh, just in the last 24 hours, we've had 24 live videos, so whether it's a sit-in at Starbucks, a vigil where pigs are being taken to slaughter, I'll protest outside a wet market. We just did a summit to transition farmers and ranchers from animal agriculture to plant-based. We're using social media, and the phone is the most powerful weapon you have. Let's stop being so in love with mainstream media, okay? They spit in our face. They kick sand in our face. They don't cover. Advertiser-based media does not cover the vegan movement. And if they do, they cover it in a twisted fashion. So the first thing I said was, insanity, to use a 12-step phrase, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. When I started to go protest, because when you're a mainstream journalist, you can't go to protests. So once I was free, that's how Jane Unchained came about. I said, somebody said, you're unchained. You can go to a protest. It was my girlfriend at the time, Donna, who's still a good friend. And I said, yeah, Jane Unchained. And that's how we just made it up. But the point is, I started going to protests for the first time because when you're a reporter, you can't go. They don't like it. It's a violation of your journalistic rules to start going to protests as a protester. And every single one of them said the same thing, because there's no media coverage. Okay. Oh, they were going to come, but there was a breaking news story. There's always a breaking news story. That's exactly what you say when you don't want to cover something. And so you don't want to just say, no, I'm not going to cover it because I'm beholden to my advertisers, the meat, dairy, and pharmaceutical industry. So all these people were doing all these demonstrations, but they weren't documenting it. And in New York City, especially, people were just walking back quickly. I was like, whoa, there's something here that's missing. And that's when I thought about Jane Unchained. And I started with a GoPro camera. I remember one of the first protests we covered was in Brooklyn at the Staples Center against Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. More than 200 people in 9-degree weather holding signs, shivering. And I had the GoPro was shaking because it was so cold. And I thought, is this worth it? And I thought, yeah, if these people can go and stand there for hours telling people don't go to the circus and holding signs in 9-degree weather, I could at least go and videotape it and interview people. Well, lo and behold, here we are. Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus is gone. It is in the dustbin of history, not because of anything I did, because of the work of PETA. But the point is that every single one of these live videos or tape videos or Instagram posts, they have an impact. And so let's not deify mainstream media, which is on the way out ultimately. The cable cutters and the cord nevers are going to be the mainstream soon. And this is where it's at. That's why NBC, for example, has just started this huge streaming service in Harvard, because they see the writing on the wall. So we need to empower ourselves and not be so like, oh, mainstream media, mainstream media. Sure, it's great when you get on mainstream media, but it's also great to say we're going to do an end run around mainstream media and get the information out. And that's what Jane Unchained is all about. It's about getting the information to the people. Because a lot of times, even when mainstream media covers it, they cover it in a twisted way that is despicable, really. It doesn't even tell the story. I was at a DXE protest, Direct Action Everywhere, in San Francisco. There was well over 1,000 people from DXE marching in the streets, most of them wearing matching T-shirts. It was extraordinary. They were giving speeches. They had giant megaphones. They went into the San Francisco Ferry Building, which is a big foodie destination, and they did a die-in from one end of the building to the other, which is the size of the New York City Public Library, a ginormous building. No media coverage. You know who was live? Me, for Jane Unchained, with my camera and on the phone, going live on Facebook. And that ended up in a documentary. It ended up in this, that, and the other. So that's what everybody can do. You don't have to do it for Jane Unchained. We do have about 70 contributors who go live. And also we do a daily vegan cooking show called Lunch Break Live. And we've also done a TV show that is on New Day, New Chef, that's on Amazon Prime and public television stations all around the country. Our vegan cooking show, New Day, New Chef, on Amazon Prime. Please watch it. And we also did a documentary, Countdown to Year Zero, which has won several awards, which is also on Amazon Prime. All of this was done on Jane Unchained. So I think it's great that I had a mainstream media career, but I don't live in the past. I live today in the present. And what we're doing today is just as important as that. It may be different, but we need to own the power that we have. If every single vegan was going live on Facebook every single day, we would hit the tipping point tomorrow. And that's what we need to do, is inspire people to use the tools. What's a network? A network is a fancy word for a production company with a distribution pipeline to an audience. Everybody with a phone has a network. We just got to start using them.
I love it. I love that it's like everything you've done to date, like that whole career in mainstream media has obviously helped in birthing Jane Unchained, which I think is wonderful. And you're definitely inspiring people. And I love that. Now we're going to end with what I call a little rapid fire section. So I'm going to ask you a series of just short questions and answer them in maybe one word or one sentence or less. Okay. You ready?
Well, yeah, but I wish I could have talked about New Day, New Chef, our vegan cooking show that was shot in studio. We launched a vegan cooking show that it was the first of its kind. It was 20 some years ago that I was basically kicked out of the Food Network's office pitching a vegan cooking show. Everybody's trying to sell a vegan cooking show, and I hope some are, but it's very difficult if you're dealing with advertiser-based media. So the great thing about the streaming platforms is that they're not advertiser-based, they're subscription-based. And if you can get on there, you can get some eyeballs. So what we did was, through our nonprofit, JaneUnchained.com, which is a 501c nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit, we raised the funds through great donors and contributors, and some of them came on and cooked. I said, if you donate and you know how to cook, come on and cook. And we put together a studio quality professional cooking show with Inspired TV, our great producer, Eamon McChrystal, who's an Emmy award-winning producer. And we've had 20 episodes now on Amazon Prime, and they're also picked up on public television. That's real TV on mainstream TV. And they're all over the country. And so we basically, again, the theme is we didn't wait for approval. We didn't wait for permission. We did it on our own. And we figured, well, if they won't buy it, we'll give it to them.
Yeah. Awesome. And we'll put a link in the show notes page to the interview I did with you all about New Day, New Chef on Vegan Business Talk. And you can find out exactly how Jane made that happen, which is wonderful. Okay, rapid fire section. What's the most courageous thing you've done?
Oh, dear. Wow. I would say the most courageous thing I've done, I'd have to say it would be right up there, either getting sober and or coming out as gay. That would be the two toughest things, let's say, the two toughest things I've done. So I guess it takes the most courage.
Awesome. What does leadership mean to you, and what style of leader do you think you are?
Gee, that's another, role model leader. That's quite a word. Look, there are so many people that I look up to in this movement. Anita Krines, the founder of the SAVE movement. You're doing incredible work. Ingrid Newkirk. There's a lot of leaders in our movement. I think that the most important thing is to do the next indicated thing and stay out of the results. And just do the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and pivot. Every day I make mistakes. And actually it was the vegan bros, and they're funny guys. Not everybody's cup of tea, but they said, don't call it a mistake, call it a pivot. And they pointed out every time you go on Facebook or Instagram, it's different, right? Are they saying, oh, the previous version was a mistake? No, they're just pivoting. So when they said that, that really resonated with me. I said, yeah, I got to keep pivoting, because every time you do something, you go back and look at it and go, I could have done that better. I could have done that better. So I would say constantly pivot and stay out of the results and try to stay out of ego, because that's a pitfall. So I would say those are the three things that might be leadership.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
And learn to apologize.
Oh, well, that's a good one as well. Yes, properly.
So I'm sorry if I insisted on talking about a new dating show and you had to do something else.
You're forgiven. What do you love most about yourself? Not about your work or anything. What do you love most about you? Yeah, we're getting touchy-feely.
This is so beautiful. I like the fact that, and this is most to do with my upbringing. Somebody said to me, you were raised on cliches. And I realized, oh, yeah, you're right. But I had a lot of pick yourself up and dust yourself off. And when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of sympathy for life's little pitfalls. It was just basically, you'll figure it out. And also, my mother was very aware of the cosmic joke of life, and she had a great sense of humor, and she handled so many challenges in her life so well, because she had such a great sense of humor, and she could see the humor in any situation. So I try to see the humor in situations, like especially either you laugh or you cry. Try to see the humor and not take myself so seriously, and despite mistakes, just keep going.
Love it. Just finally, anything you would like to share, any lessons you've learned? I know you've mentioned a couple already that you would like to share with other vegan women leaders.
Well, I would say, let's stop bickering amongst ourselves. It's very important. If you don't like what another group is doing, do something else, but you don't need to publicly get on Facebook or Instagram or one of these other platforms and say, why did they do this? Like, there's companies killing billions of animals. Let's focus on that. And yes, we all have different approaches. In fact, on JaneUnChained.com, I hope you all visit JaneUnChained.com. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So if you want to donate, the donate page is right there. But, and by the way, I take no salary. I also donate to my own organization, and we're mostly volunteer, almost all, except for a few key technical people. But I would say, I got sidetracked with the donation thing, but no, I would say what I say on my website. If you have a problem, call a lawyer or the police. Leave me out of it. Now, there is an exception to every rule. If I feel animals are in danger or there's somebody in danger, sure, I'll look at something. But in general, principles above personalities. We are united in a common cause, and nobody's going to be everybody's cup of tea. I'm certainly not everybody's cup of tea. So if you don't like somebody, keep it to yourself. Let's just keep on mission to create a vegan world, because the clock is ticking. We are barreling toward extinction. My documentary, Countdown to Year Zero, which is also on Amazon Prime, and I urge you to watch it, not because, it's such a great documentary, although I think it is quite good, but it profiles the work of Dr. Silas Rao, a systems engineer, an analyst and systems engineer who's got a methodology for creating a vegan world by 2026. And we are racing the clock. You see it with the fires and the floods and the extreme heat and the drought. We can't afford, the clock is ticking, double down. We have momentum. We've got the Beyond Meats and the Oatleys and the people going vegan and the vegan stars and the Game Changers movie and a great new movie. They're trying to kill us. We've got a diversity. We've got just so much on our side, and people are waking up. The vice president said she was trying vegan before 6. You know, Cory Booker is a U.S. senator. Eric Adams is a vegan who is going to be the next mayor of New York, likely. You know, we have momentum, but everybody has to double down. And any energy that you're wasting, sniping at somebody in the vegan movement, I would say redirect it toward creating a vegan world. There's 7.9 billion people on this planet. We can't just talk individually to people. We have to use social media. There's too many people. And the other thing I would say is we all have people in our lives who are those militant carnivores, right? Don't go for the low-hanging fruit. That one relative who's never going to give up meat, let it go. Because all the energy you're putting into that could be put into, I had people in my neighborhood. One came, she goes, "Jane, I'm off everything but eggs." And I said, "Great, I have something to drop off." I went to the store, I got Just Egg, both the kind you put in the toaster and the kind that you think. Next day, I handed it to her. She was like, "Yay." That person is open. The other person said to me, "Oh, I hear you're a vegan. I love vegetables." I got her a book. You know, go for the people who are open to change.
Love it. Such good advice. Wonderful. So thank you so much, Jane. As I highly recommend everyone go visit JaneUnChained.com. Also check out Jane's books, particularly iWant and Addict Nation. They're both so relevant still to today. You are such an inspiration. I know you don't like titles and, you know, whatever, but you are an incredible inspiration. I'm so glad I got to meet you and you're on my radio. You're doing amazing work. If you are watching the video of this, you can find JaneUnchained.com scrolling along the bottom of the video. If you're listening to the audio version, the link to JaneUnchained.com will be on the show notes page for that episode. Jane, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Love you. Love your work. Thanks for joining me today.
I want to say that you do incredible work as well. And what you're doing with the vegan women's leadership is so amazing. I love how you are interfacing with business. You are really, let's face it, the governments are the ones who are dragging their heels and still subsidizing animal agriculture. It's the private sector to a large degree that's making the transition more rapidly. So I think what you're doing, the work you're doing, is absolutely extraordinary. So keep it up, Katrina.
Will do. Thanks a lot, Jane. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye for now.
All right, bye.